Good evening. This is the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Wednesday, February 5th. It's 7 o'clock p.m. and we have a number of continuation cases and one new case tonight. First case we're going to take is case number 22-19, Optimal Hospitality Group LLC, 990 Boston Providence Highway. This is for a special permit and a variance request. Good evening, Mr. Mackey. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Doing just fine, thank you.
We have quite the turnout this evening.
We do. Well, I guess for the record, Phil Mackey, 1256 Washington Street, Norwood, Massachusetts, is counsel for on behalf of the applicant. With that out of the way, at our last hearing, which I believe was in December, before Christmas, you gave us some homework, and we had some a lot to look at and think through, and we basically, I think, have a presentation that will answer hopefully all of your questions. Certainly you can ask more, but we're trying to be as thorough as possible this evening. With that, one of the things we had started with, and I think just for the flow of information tonight, you had asked for more information on the traffic as it relates to parking areas and so on and so forth. So I would propose that we have Jason Adams here from McMahon to give you an overview and answer questions of that, and then move on into the height variance, which I believe is what most people are. It's going to be the bulk of the discussion and most of the comments.
Okay.
If that's acceptable to you, I would turn it over to Jason for right
Sure.
now.
Good evening. My name is Jason Adams. I am a traffic engineer with McMahon Associates, and we were hired to review the traffic impacts of this project. We completed a traffic impact study, which focused on the access and operations of the site access and the adjacent intersection of Route 1 and High Plains Street. So we collected manual turning movement counts during the weekday morning, weekday afternoon, and Saturday midday peak periods. The times at which the combination of vehicles traveling past the site and those vehicle trips generated by the site would be greatest. We collected those volumes at the existing site driveways and the adjacent signalized intersection. We then forecasted those traffic volumes out to a future year of 2025 so that we capture other development growth along the area and aren't just looking at the existing traffic volumes traveling by the site. Completed a trip generation assessment of the project site. We used industry standard data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and that allows us to understand the expected number of vehicle trips that would be generated by the project. That data indicates that the project would generate approximately 30 entering and 20 exiting vehicle trips during the weekday morning peak hour, approximately 30 entering and 30 exiting vehicle trips during the weekday afternoon peak hour, and during the Saturday midday peak hour, approximately 50 entering and 40 exiting vehicle trips. So during those weekday peak times, and that's not every hour of the weekday, but during those weekday peak times, we'd expect to see about a new vehicle every 2 minutes entering and exiting the project site. And then Saturday it's a little bit higher, a new vehicle every minute or two, which is a pretty small number of vehicle trips when given the context of the location of the site. We distributed those vehicle trips onto the surrounding roadway network and completed traffic analysis so that we could understand how the intersection of Route 1 and High Plains Street operates without the project, and then how it operates with the project. And that allows us to see if there are any impacts associated with the project. What our analysis shows is that the level of service, so that's the grade given to the operations of each movement at the intersection, doesn't change whether or not this project is there. So it shows that the project is not expected to have an appreciable impact on the operations of vehicles traveling past the site or at the signalized intersection. As part of this project, there's some fairly significant improvements. Currently today there are 2 curb cuts along Route 1. The project site proposes to consolidate that to only have 1 access point, reconfigures the parking as part of the project site. So the curb cut that serves the Applebee's today that's closest to the signal would be removed, and the only access on Route 1, as you can see, is further south, further away from the traffic signal. We've also proposed improvements at the site driveway on High Plain Street, where we are proposing to restrict left turn movements out of the site. So that's a movement that exists today. We're proposing to remove that based on our discussions with Mass DOT, and we will need to go before them to receive an access permit as part of this process. So they'll be doing a full review of the project access and how the curb cuts tie into the roadway network. Based on discussions that we've had with them, we feel that they will see this as a positive improvement along the area. It's great for access management, removing a curb cut on Route 1. And we feel that the project site itself has been designed in a safe and efficient manner such that vehicles traveling to and from the site and also within the site will be able to move in a safe manner. So overall, we see this project fitting well within the fabric of the existing roadway network. We see the site driveway is operating in a safe and efficient manner. Plenty of site distance available so that vehicles can make appropriate decisions as to when to enter into the vehicle stream. And we don't see the project with any appreciable impact. Happy to answer any questions and get into any details if that was too fast.
Nope. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So the exit, or the exit onto Route 1
Yes.
is in a right turn lane. Are you
Correct.
going to change the right turn lane at all?
No, we're not proposing any change related to the signal. The vehicles will be entering into that first lane, but they'll have ability to change lanes as needed.
Okay.
Is it along those lines, is there a shoulder that people can, as they slow down, pull to the right before they make that right-hand turn? Or
Yeah,
is it just-
there's a little bit of room in that shoulder area to get out of the way. And similar to, again, we're not expecting there to be really a noticeable amount of increased traffic. So those right turn movements happening today into the Applebee's are there. And as part of this project, we did review the safety history of the site driveways as well as the signal. There's been extensive work done at that signal, as I'm sure you're all aware, and Mass DOT has led efforts in a road safety audit, which the town officials from Walpole participated in to identify improvements. So there are things that Mass DOT has done already at that intersection to make it safer, and what we're doing here by pulling that driveway further away from the signal is only really a positive over what is happening today.
With the access going out to Route 27, what's the distance from the corner to that turn?
I'm not sure. David, do you know what that distance is? I think it's, yeah, it's probably, it's,
Okay. That's,
yeah, it's probably about 30 feet or so, 35 feet.
and a car taking a right-hand turn and then somebody slowing to turn into the parking that's sufficient, one car length?
Yes, yeah.
When did you do the traffic counts on this?
The traffic counts were done in June of 2018.
Was any consideration made for Patriots games or stadium events?
No, not specifically. When we look at our traffic numbers, we essentially try to evaluate the project in the context of a typical day. So June, with schools in session, is higher than the average month, but it's not the peak time of travel that may come through the intersection.
And the right-hand turn onto High Plain Street, what sort of improvements at that location will be made to prevent the left-hand?
Excuse me, we just measured it on the engineering
Okay.
plan, it's closer to 70 feet.
Closer to 70? Sure. So that, the right turn you're talking about, coming from the driveway, turning right onto,
Onto High Plain?
Yep.
Yeah, just I think a lot of people tend to look quickly and they take a left out of there even though they probably shouldn't. So I'm wondering what sort of improvements there, or signage, or what do you propose
yeah,
there?
typically for an intersection configuration like this, And again, we'll work with Mass DOT because they're going to need to approve everything. They'll look to be a physical barrier, some type of curbing that will still allow the left turn in, but will prevent that left turn out. I mean, not to say that somebody couldn't do it, but it's going to be very obvious that they shouldn't be doing that. Signage will be installed standard with state guidelines for right turn only signage, pavement markings that will clearly show delineation that the right turn is the movement to be made, and then there will be probably end up being a bit of a physical barrier there.
Given that you can go right out onto Route 1 from one location, and if you go out onto High Plains Street, you don't have to move around. Did you make any assumptions about how many people might choose which?
Yes, yeah, certainly, you know, those heading north on Route 1, it's pretty clear that they'll want to turn right directly onto Route 1. You know, those vehicles that are heading east on High Plains Street will most likely turn out of the High Plains Street. The vehicles looking to head west or looking to head south do have some options for which direction they go, and so we've made assumptions based on the existing traffic volumes and where we expect the vehicles coming to and from the hotel. They're likely to be more regional trips coming from 95 and the highway system. So, you know, they'll have the ability to turn out on either road and, you know, find their path of least resistance.
Will there be internal signage as to whether you want to go west or north? You know, because the exit onto High Plain is really the back of the hotel.
Right.
A lot of people don't even think about that when they're going in and out. Will there be internal signage for that?
Yeah, we could work to develop that, and certainly it is beneficial to our site and our customers to
Oh, yeah.
direct them and give them as good an experience as we can. So, yep, we would certainly be open to that.
All right.
What would be the proposed path for someone trying to head west on High Plains Street? How would they exit your property and go west?
So they can take a right and turn onto Route 1 and cut across it. At peak times, that may be a difficult move, but there are still gaps in that would allow for that movement. So that, I mean, that's a movement that happens today out of the Applebee's for vehicles that do that, and they have a significant amount more distance than the driveway today. That is based on our review of existing traffic volumes. That's expected to be the lowest volume destination, is vehicles coming out of the site looking to head west on High Plains Street. We'd expect that Route 1 would take the bulk of vehicle trips. So that's not a movement we'd expect to see as often as others, but there is opportunity to do so.
And the traffic light to enter Walmart, if you're pushing all the exit traffic onto High Plain heading east, how is that going to affect that traffic light?
That traffic light has a fair amount of capacity to take on. And again, we're not talking about a lot of new vehicle trips. Once you've distributed the vehicle trips to the different driveways, you know, each driveway is probably only seeing a new vehicle trip every 4 or 5 minutes, you know, in those peak hours, and even less over the course of the day. So it's not really going to be a noticeable difference. It's probably the difference between a Tuesday and a Wednesday, that there might just be a little bit more traffic on one of those days. So we wouldn't really expect that any of the driveways or the signals on either side of the driveway on High Plains Street would experience any appreciable impact because of the project.
Is the driveway on Route 1, is that the existing drive, or have you moved it?
We have moved it. So there's the existing drive is essentially at the kind of comes into the Applebee's. If you can see the Applebee's building on the map, it's actually a little bit as where that existing curb cut is.
We've slid it down as close to the wetlands as we can.
Okay.
Without
Yeah.
having to.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yep.
Try to get it as
Yeah, we
as
want
far
it
away
as far
from the
back as
intersection
possible.
Push down as far as we possibly could.
All right.
Just for truck deliveries and that sort of thing, do you have a recommended path for larger delivery trucks?
I think bringing them in off of Route 1 is going to be the preferred method, and those driveways will be designed to accommodate larger vehicles. And again, that's something that Mass DOT for sure will be focused on, is making sure that the radii of those turning movements can accommodate large vehicles, because the last thing Mass DOT wants is a large vehicle that can't make those turns safely into the site. So all of that will be likely done on that Route 1 driveway.
But half the site is in Sharon. Is there any access or available access through right-of-ways or easements to either Route 27 or another spot on Route 1?
In terms of access points beyond those that are
Right.
shown here, no.
Anybody have any other traffic-related questions? Okay. Good, thank you.
Just to amplify on that last comment, Mr. Chairman, the parcel in Sharon, to the back, if you will, is bordered by I-95. There's nothing through that. The state owns the land in between the, what would be the parking lot and Route 27, and they've not granted anything, nor was any appurtenant to the land earlier. And out the other way, if you will, is all wet. So that effectively is completely closed off. And to the best of my knowledge, there are no easements or anything on record that would indicate otherwise. So to move on, to get to the height variance question, basically, I'd just like to run through the criteria of variance. I think that it's a good framework and answers most of the questions that had come up previously. So one of the first questions was, is there a hardship? Bob brought this up. You certainly could do something other than a hotel. We actually did a reasonable amount of case law research, mainly at the request of the Community Development and Economic Development Committee, asking us, all right, what are you trying to do, and can you give us justification for it? So we actually provided a legal memorandum, which they actually had reviewed. We can get that to in a minute. So as far as the hardship goes, and I learned a few things myself on this one. There is a different level of hardship between a use variance and a dimensional variance. A use variance is much higher, and that particular question in Walpole is irrelevant because we don't allow it. So you should never be seeing use variance and having to have something rise to that level. So as far as a dimensional variance, which is what we're requesting, economics absolutely do play into the equation. One of the cases that we found, Wayman, basically said that $250,000 to $500,000 was significant hardship. But it's not a bright line, and I'm not pretending to say, hey, all I got to do is get $250,000 and it's good. But what more importantly the case said is you need to look at the whole thing, and it doesn't need to be economically impossible to do something else. It just needs to be economically impracticable or infeasible. And again, this is for dimension, not use, but that's what we're here for, and that's all Walpole can entertain by our bylaw. Because in that particular case, they had a residential high-rise, which clearly was allowed to be a restaurant or very similar situation to what we have here. There are other things you can put on Route 1 than a hotel. In this particular case, there were other things you could put on that parcel other than a residential high-rise building. The court found that you don't have to find that you can't do anything else, but it looked at totality of the circumstances. You know, how much is the project going to cost? How much is any development there on that piece of property going to cost? What are the other uses in the area? Is there too much competition for what have you? In that particular case, it was restaurants and whatnot, and they just said,
The court took that into consideration,
Did.
competition and free enterprise?
It absolutely did.
Okay. What case was
Because
that?
It was Wolfman versus Brookline, which we're gonna be talking about a few times this evening. And so they did actually take a lot into consideration, and they basically found that requiring the applicant in that particular case to build something other than what was proposed was a hardship based on the totality of the circumstances. So in this particular case, as we kind of discussed before, I'm not telling you that I can't put something else in the property, because that's clearly not the case. But for this particular project to make economic sense, which we believe is competitive, which we have agreement from both towns that we can do, and we can go in the whole litany, but I'm also not here to reiterate virtually everything I presented. This is what makes sense, and we do believe, based on that case law, that we have a good argument. And then as far as uniqueness goes, we found several cases. We also found another case that basically said you could look at agreements with the town. In that case, it was stipulation saying we won't build a parking garage, and that therefore changed the geometry of the building, and that was considered enough of uniqueness and what have you. But now, we listened to Bob, we listened to you a few meetings ago, and we understand that's not what you want to hang your hat on, the intermunicipal agreement between Sharon, Walpole, and so on and so forth.
But I had a question about that, though, just
Yeah.
the case you're referencing.
Mhm.
And just looking at the legal memo, it talks about, there was the stipulation that you mentioned, but that the unique conditions were, quote, not the result of defendant's action. So I'm wondering, does the municipal agreement at issue in that case, was the developer a party to that agreement?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. It's interesting to me that it's sort of the concept of you can't create your own hardship and then say, hey, I've got the hardship.
Correct.
So it seems to me entering into a contract or agreements of some kind that sort of tie your hands and then say, well, I was a party to that, but now I've got a hardship. You didn't have to agree to that, in other words.
I believe, and again, we're not hanging our hat on this, but just to
Yep.
answer that particular question, I think the crux of it was, yes, you did enter an agreement, but it wasn't, there's a difference between, hey, you don't enter an agreement if you're not getting a benefit. I don't want to say that. But there is a difference between, in this particular case, where you have to do something in order to make your project work versus it's just beneficial. And so it's a fine line,
Right.
but it is there. If it's purely, I'm entering agreement with the town of Walpole so that I can ask for a triple density, whatever, and I don't really need it, I would 100% say, hey, that's a totally self-contained hardship. But if I'm entering the agreement with the town because I can't get, in this particular case, sewer and water without it, you can't have, well, I shouldn't say you can't, you could have a parking lot that doesn't require sewer and water. There's other things you could do, but you can't have a real, honest to God, commercial use without sewer and water. So I think there's a differentiation. But again, so we did bring it up. We think it's valid, but I think the board can absolutely make its finding, should you so choose, that a variance is warranted without even referencing the agreements, which appeared to me the more comfortable course of action. So that's what I would propose we go with, unless you so feel otherwise. So back to the Wolfman v. Brookline case. In that particular instance, basically what happened is you had a lot in Brookline, and it was a split zone. So it is in one town, whereas this is in two, but you had split zones with two different height requirements. And they found that requiring a lopsided building was a hardship because it would increase construction costs, increase foundation costs. There was a whole litany. And in that particular case, one of the unique circumstances was the split lot. So we certainly have that here, and you don't find, there are about 5 if you go around the border of Walpole that are split. They're not all business, and the Dunkin' Donuts in Norwood for one. Actually, it's in Walpole, but parking lot is mainly in Norwood, is a split lot. So that's 2 on Route 1. I think there's one on Pleasant Street. There's a few others, but there aren't many. So that was a unique circumstance. They talked about conditions of the soil. In this particular case, we have wetlands. As I've already alluded to, the access through Sharon, which may have existed at one point, completely was blocked off with the construction of 95. Nothing is ever going to be allowed to have a curb cut onto the highway for obvious reasons. So you have a variety of unique circumstances that are probably far more in the comfort zone. Talking about, we have unique topography with the wetlands, we have a split zone, we have I-95, we have landlocked lots. So the court has found the totality of those circumstances can be, should you choose to do so, found as a unique circumstance. As I just kind of briefly went over, they have found that where you have a split zone with different height requirements, requiring one side to be lower than the other, can be found to be a substantial hardship. And they basically use construction costs, break that down however you want, but in that case it was mainly foundations. Here we'd have foundations, steel versus wood, 2 different roofs, different elevator, so on and so forth. So the building does get considerably more expensive if we're 4 floors in Walpole and something more in Sharon.
How much more in Sharon?
Well, by the bylaw, we would be allowed to go to 80 feet, but in this particular case, at bare minimum, we would keep the 5th floor that's already designed. If they really needed to get the rooms that we lose in Walpole, I could see them being stacked on top of it.
So that actually leads into another concern, and I'm glad that the fire chief's here, and we'll get to him, I'm sure, at some point,
I would imagine so.
on supporting an 85-foot building as allowed in Sharon, which you just
I don't want to add
referenced.
5 to them.
What?
80.
80. But what is the limit in Sharon?
It is 80.
It's 80, not 85?
Correct.
Okay.
And I don't think from a practical standpoint you would have, because we're asking for 65. Even if you added 12, you're still in the 70s. Not
Okay,
that
but-
that's good, but
No, but it's-
it is considerably higher than what we have now. And again, we don't want to build that at all. It's our goal to get a rectangular box with some parapets around it. And if
That's the goal.
if necessary, we're certainly willing to stipulate to that as a condition of approval. We have no problem with that. We're trying to just build a 5-story building. I know I'm completely out of order, but and I don't mean out of order as impolite, but in my presentation. I am remiss. We did have the architects and engineers look at this. It's not a huge reduction, but we can, we believe, go down to 62 feet instead of 65. So again, if the board was amenable to granting the variance, normally the board has previously had a motion on behalf of the applicant to amend the request, but we'd be requesting 62, not 65. Again, not a huge order of magnitude, but we did say that we would go back, look at it, talk to the architects. The goal is still to do modular construction, which has constraints, but we're pretty sure we can fit it somewhere between 61 and 62 feet. I can't get more specific than that because no one's been able to give me that answer. So as far as the public good, we don't believe that should you grant this variance, there is any detriment to the public good. And I also want to show this, so I'll put this up here for a Basically, if this doesn't fall, we leave it here. That basically is a graphic representation of the perceived height of the building. Because, yes, there's a big difference between a 45-foot, which is allowed by right, building at the 50-foot setback, and a building 154 feet back from the line of the property. In this particular case, we are 154 feet back. So what that basically shows you, the top picture there, is if you were at Route 1, which presumably is what most of the town is going to be concerned with, how does it look like, how does it look as they drive down the highway? That's what a 45-foot building proportionally would look like. It conforms, it's at the setback, it's allowed by right. So other than site plan considerations, there really is nothing that needs to be discussed about it. The second picture, or the one in the middle, I'm kind of going from top to the bottom, is what a 65-foot building looks like at 154 feet back. Again, I'm not telling you it's a shorter building, but perception being what they are, if you're on Route 1, you're driving down, you're actually seeing a shorter building. And then the bottom one, because John, you brought this up, it has a parapet. We're not at, so again, perceptions being what they are. The building height may be 60, excuse me, I keep saying 65, or we've reduced that, but that is actually showing 65 feet. We just got the architect's information back this morning. But the bottom one shows 72 feet, which is the building plus the parapet, which, again, if we're talking perceived height, it's going to look that high because that's certainly what you're going to see. So as far as nullifying the intent of the bylaw or being a detriment to the public good, as for the perception of the building for the most of the town, it's going to look smaller than a conforming building would at the setback. So there is no derogation, and there is no real harm being given to anybody. And we'd also mention that this is one of the few lots in town that there really are no neighbors. You've got 95 to the back, which is the closest to the hotel itself. You have the state gas station on one side, so I should say there are no neighbors, but there are no residences or businesses that are going to be affected. To the front, you have actually Applebee's between the hotel and the highway, if you will, excuse me, Route 1 and 27, which will also act to somewhat, I don't say buffer, but break up the silhouette of the hotel. You can see the restaurant first with the hotel behind it. And then to the south, you have the wetlands, and there is nobody there. And in short of changing the wetlands bylaws, there probably never will be. So unlike other buildings in town, we have to worry about shadows and visual, what can you see out of my window when this thing gets built. This doesn't affect anybody. So we believe that there is no detriment to the public good, and we believe that it is in harmony with what is being asked of the zoning bylaw to put in the highway business district. So that is the summary of my presentation. We asked.
Actually, we might have some questions for you. I have a question right
Yeah,
now.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Do you, or your client have a sense of what it would cost to build the 116, a 4 and a 6 versus 5 straight across? I mean, do you have a sense of it? Is it?
It's in the $500,000 plus range. You need a third staircase because you have 2 heights. Now you need a center staircase to get 2 exits.
Right.
You've got to do steel over podium. You're going to do the whole building steel at that point. You're not going to do half wood and half steel.
Is this going to be wood or steel?
Wood.
Wood.
The proposed construction's wood.
Okay.
And you may need a second elevator bank. We haven't gone through the regs yet. You need a second elevator bank. Plus, we're going up another floor, or, with the elevator, and each floor elevators cost more. My discussion with the architect this morning was, $500,000 would be conservative.
Okay.
Also, the Walkman and versus Brookline case? Is that a ZBA case, or is that what kind of case was that?
That was an appeal of a special permit and a variance.
So it was ZBA, it wasn't
Yes.
planning board?
No,
Okay.
it was ZBA.
And that was all within the town of Brookline?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was the court, I wouldn't be citing it if it didn't, but that was what court said variance is warranted.
Town council, Attorney Mackey's provided us with a case of, supporting his argument. Do you know of any other cases where towns have looked at this and said that for a variance, the split lot raises concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We haven't found a case specific on that point. Obviously, variances are at the discretion of the zoning board of appeals. You know, they're not as of right, that's why it's a variance. I'm not sure if the town administrator distributed to you the letter that we drafted after our analysis. We have looked at the cases, and I'm going to put aside the issue of the various agreements. I tend to agree that's really not one that we should be hanging hats on. But in terms of the split lot, in terms of what's been presented, looking at the Wolfman case, we do feel that is supportive of the argument that was made. We did look at the analysis that was provided by counsel with respect to the issues raised, and we do think that there are colorable arguments made with respect to each of the issues, the topography, the soil conditions, the uniqueness of the lot, and the financial hardship on the proponent. So from our perspective, obviously there's a great deal of case law that supports the discretion of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the ability of the Zoning Board of Appeals to deny a variance. No question about that. I think Attorney Mackey would acknowledge that this is something that's significantly discretionary on the part of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And in general, we see cases where a grant is challenged. It's very difficult to challenge a denial unless there are improper actions taken by the board. So generally what you would see is a challenge to a variance granted, and in this case I think the Wolfman case is a significant case for standing for the proposition as indicated, the disparate zoning. I know in this case we have even a more unique situation because we have a lot split by a boundary between two municipalities where you really don't have control of either side. You have limitation. You have one that's more permissive, one that's less permissive. It creates a unique situation. Then you've got the boundaries with respect to the state highway, the wetlands. All these impacts together, we think, would allow within the discretion of the Zoning Board of Appeals a determination that this is a hardship on the property. But again, it's something within the discretion of the board itself.
Thank you.
Just a
Yep, Paul.
question. It's interesting, I haven't read the Wolfman case, but just reading the summary of it, that it looks like in that case, the actual zoning bylaw called for kind of a stepwise increase as you're adjacent to a single-family home. So that was obviously on the minds of the people who were drafting the bylaw, and even in that circumstance, when it was pretty clearly the intent to provide some sort of buffer zone, that the financial hardship that persuaded the board, and then the board granted the variance, and then that variance was upheld.
Right. I think that really, it obviously, it's interesting. It is similar here because although you don't have a similar zoning requirement for that kind of buffer, it practically speaking, you wind up with the same situation because of the disparate zoning. So it is probably the closest you're going to get to an analogous situation. And I think, again, you're right that given what was determined by the Brookline Zoning Board of Appeals, it's a very similar and certainly supportable argument here.
And with just a question with regard to, I take it this demonstrative is really to give us a sense of sort of practical experience, what you would actually see, but this is not an argument that for zoning purposes, the effective height is what we should be concerned about.
This is
Okay.
basically graphics. So when I say common sense says the further building away is, the smaller it looks. We all know that, but picture says 1,000 words. I'm not asking you to look at that saying
It's more of a
There is
public
no-
impact.
There's no engineering thing behind this. John probably is having flashbacks to foxholes years ago with reticles and mills and calculations, trying to figure out how far a building way was. But that's really what, all I'm trying to graphically show here.
Okay. Any other questions on that part of the variance? Okay.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Chairman, we have had letters submitted in previous hearings, and I tried to do my best to summarize for other people. I would prefer not to do that, and we have graciously, we have police, fire, building, town council have all graciously agreed to show up here and answer your questions directly so that I don't have to paraphrase badly what they mean. So I would ask for, have an opportunity to speak.
So, yeah, I'd actually, from the fire department, if Chief Bailey or Deputy Barry.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, one of the things, you know, the zoning board was concerned about was the height of this building. It's definitely, would be one of the largest structures on Route 1, and larger than the Fairfield Hotel, which was built without a variance. And now tonight we heard that it was a wooden structure up to 65 feet. Your thoughts on that?
So that is allowed by building code. It's podium construction. It's very similar to the two buildings that are going on downtown, as well as up here at Walpole Woodworkers. We are familiar with that type of construction. In the case of all of them, they are fully sprinkled facilities with full alarm detection. As far as the ladder truck goes, our tower is 100 foot, our ladder truck is 110 foot. As far as how far it can reach and where it can go, it all depends on how you place it. If you place it by driving it in forwards, as an example, you lose 47 feet right off the bat on the tower because it's off the back end of the tower, so you're losing the first 47 feet. You back that truck in, you're gaining 100 feet, and you have a full usage of 100 feet. So it all depends on the placement of the truck. We do not anticipate any major problems with the height as it's being presented.
And as far as the site plan, how would trucks access, fire equipment access into the site?
Because of where our location is here in the downtown, unless we happen to be up in the South Walpole area or in the Common Street area, it would most likely be across Route 27.
And have you reviewed the turn radiuses or radii for this site?
Yes, we have. The deputy submitted a template of our turning, of our largest piece of apparatus, which in this case is the tower. It's 47 feet long, and does meet the requirements that are necessary.
Did that consider I don't know if it's appropriate to call it an island or whatever it is, it's gonna be used to prevent people from turning left? That took that into account as well?
Yes, when the deputy reviews it with the engineers, all gets taken into consideration.
Does any of the other wooden frame buildings in this town have solar panels on the roof?
I do not know the answer to that.
Does that pose any sort of extra concern from the fire department?
Photovoltaic solar panels, they do cause a different challenge for us in firefighting, as they are always live. So yes, it does change our tactics. We train on that. What it prevents is, it basically prevents us from opening roofs. Without them, you can pretty much pick where you're gonna open. When they're up there and you have an array that's set up on the roof, you have to pick your spots more carefully. You may not be able to do vertical ventilation, you may have to do horizontal, which is a different process that we use, so.
And how about the mutual aid agreement with Sharon? Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, we are. We've met with them. We work with them on a regular basis, predominantly out on the highway, but also on the Route 1 corridor, so we are very familiar with each other.
Okay. Are there any other structures that have been built in Walpole that are on town lines that you have a similar agreement with?
No.
And how about, is there anything from Sharon or another town that you provide you would provide response for?
So when you say on the town, like with the split line like we have here, or
Right.
just in general? Because
No,
we do
specific.
utilize, like Sharon responds automatically with us to Siemens because of the Siemens is a very large facility and it takes a lot of manpower to go through it, so we have them automatically respond there. Likewise, we have automatic response from the town of Westwood out in our 109 area because of the response times out there, so we have automatic agreements with them, so.
How about the new hotel on the Foxborough line? Do they assist you there, Foxborough?
If we call them, they will, but they are not typically on our run card for out there.
Okay.
Other questions? Jane, anything?
All set.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Okay. We also have the police department here. Good to see you this evening, Chief.
Good to see you too. Good evening.
Evening.
On the police department's perspective, we don't have any real issues. As far as response to the hotel, basically, as Chief Bailey mentioned, we met with the fire chief and the police chief over in Sharon, and essentially what we would do is we would jointly respond to any emergency that takes place. It's similar to what we do now. Like, we share jurisdiction on Route 1 now, you know, in front of Lexus, for example, you know, where the town lines may lie. The PSAP, the public safety answering point, the 911 system, would all be directed to Walpole Dispatch, and that would just happen anyways, just based on the phone number. And now our new dispatch system has text 911, and we also have geofence 911, so if you call from a cell phone. So we're gonna have to look into exactly how that's gonna be geofenced up there, but we can work with the state 911 department to do that. Because we wanna make sure that it's consistent. If you call 911 from a hotline phone number, or if you call from a cell number, if you call via text. And so we would cover all of the dispatch. We also, like the fire department, and similar to the fire department, we also have a mutual aid pact. Walpole is part of Metro-LEC, which is the Metro Law Enforcement Council. That's a consortium of about 40 law enforcement agencies that are just south of Boston. It's the unit that we use for SWAT and mobile operations and all that kind of thing. And so basically, when we respond to the hotel, we would both, Sharon and Walpole Police would respond to emergencies, and then we would have to establish where the jurisdiction would lie. And if it was in Sharon, then they would take it, obviously, because they have a different court venue. If it's in Walpole, then we would take it and process it through our court venue. And we can also, because of the MOU, the officers can lawfully enforce the law in Sharon as well. So they have the same police powers, the same arrest powers. We're obviously not going to take them all. If it's in Sharon and a Walpole officer has to take lawful action at that point, we will do that. But then, if we're in Sharon, we would notify Sharon to come down, and we basically transfer any custody over to them. And so that's essentially what we do. It's similar to what we do now. You know, if an officer responds to a crash on Route 1 and it's a impaired driver or something like that, the Walpole officer can act even if he's in Sharon, and they can do the same here in Walpole. So we do it just like the fire department. We do it all the time.
Are there any other properties that you're familiar with that have this split in them?
Well, like was mentioned, Dunkin' Donuts is one. You know, if you imagine how many crashes we have at that intersection, or any type of a crime that happens in that location, you know, it's Like we said, the building, Dunkin' Donuts building is in Walpole, but part of the parking lot's in Norwood. Walpole offices lawfully act all the time in that parking lot. Norwood does the same inside of the parking lot, maybe in the building. And so we have that extra jurisdictional authority. Most often when we use it is on motor vehicle stops, car crashes, that kind of thing, where you can go from Norwood into Walpole, into Sharon, back into Walpole, into Foxborough. So we're obviously up there patrolling all the time, and our officers can effectuate a motor vehicle stop in those other jurisdictions just as they can do it in Walpole. So that's the way we mostly use it, and basically that's the same mechanism that we would apply here.
Anybody else have questions for the chief?
Just a question about response times. Are they really relevant since you want to have people out in cars? But just curious about the difference between response times between Sharon and Walpole
I think,
for this location.
so just geographically wise, we're Walpole, our sectors, like we have a Route 1 sector, we have our Sector 1 car, East Walpole car and a South Walpole car. So I think we would probably be there like on a regular patrol, regular traveling and patrol, that we would probably be there a little quicker. If you think of Sharon, you still have a little bit of ways distance before you go into Sharon, and then there's a lot of kind of area that they would have to cover, going to their center of town and everything. But that doesn't mean that there could be a Sharon cruiser right at High Plain and 27 or something like that. So.
So in other words, they automatically would come from Sharon, even though, excuse me, through you, John, even with response time, even though Walpole had somebody on Route 1, could be there like that. Would Sharon automatically come, or do you
Yes.
have to call them?
If there was an emergency situation, our dispatchers will dispatch us and Sharon. And then, sometimes we're gonna have to kind of get there and kind of, assess where it is and what's going on before we kind of figure out what we're gonna do next. Maybe some of the rooms could be in Sharon. So you're going to room 304 for a domestic disturbance, and the Walpole officers get there, and they obviously will deal with the situation first. They might even have to make an arrest, but once we establish the jurisdictional area, if we find out that we're in Sharon, we're basically just gonna hand that over to them. And then that would be processed through their court venue and through their police station for booking. And they would do the same for us.
Can I ask another
Sure.
question? Well, given the scenario, perhaps there's something there that that people at the hotel, excuse me, I have a cold, want to call the police, Walpole would come. Sharon would not necessarily come unless you call them or it was in their jurisdiction.
Right.
My point being that it sounds to me like Walpole bears the heavy lifting with regard to response to that hotel. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Well, I think, like I said, we're both gonna respond, especially if it's an emergency. If it's a car lockout or something like that, and Walpole responds and we get there and it's actually, 2 spots over in Sharon, like we're gonna do that. We're gonna, you kind of share that multi-jurisdictional responsibility. 911 system, yes, the 911 system, the PSAP is gonna come into us, but that's the way, just geographically, that's how it's done in that parcel of land on this side of 95. And even with cell phones where it's geofence, it's gonna come to us.
Then the burden would be more because of a variety of reasons. The burden would be heavier on Walpole because of the things you had described, the 911 and the, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's you're saying burden, but yeah, the burden is more on us as far as taking the call in, being the first one dispatched and everything. But again, it's similar to what we do now anyways, with Route 1 and Sharon jurisdiction up and down in that area. We're used to it, so I don't know if I don't think we'll notice an actual increase in calls or having to respond to situations up in that area.
But I guess I'm just thinking of the manpower. I mean, I hear what you're saying, you're up and down Route 1 anyway, so probably wouldn't amount, probably wouldn't make that much of a difference. But from a standpoint, from a fiscal standpoint, I guess I'm having a little bit of difficulty with sharing the burden here.
Can I ask a question for you and the fire chief as well? The decision for Walpole to be the first call and kind of carry this, I don't know, better word than burden, but how did responsibility? How did that evolve?
Well, it depends on the location, so it's the majority of the building is in Walpole. That phone number would be in Walpole, so the public safety answering point, the 911 system, is gonna be in Walpole. And the front door is in Walpole, right, so that's gonna come to us. Now, 6 months ago, even cell phones, if you called 911 from a cell phone, it was going to the state police, and then they were transferring over to us, which would have been a nightmare, because they wouldn't know who to transfer to us or Sharon. Now, it's gonna come directly to our station, same with cell phone and 911. Text, yeah. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing.
But because of there's only one public safety answering point for the building, it's only gonna either come here or it's gonna go there, and because of the geography of where the building is, it's gonna come to us.
So it's definitely hit on our taxpayers here,
Yeah.
definitely. Yep.
So my understanding is the fiscal analysis that was provided kind of gets into the estimated tax cost and what the town is going to receive.
You know, that's, from a zoning perspective, that's really not something that we're looking at as far as the.
Oh, well, you brought it up, so I just wanted to point to where.
But I'm just saying, that's not something that the zoning board is looking at.
I was just asking.
I just want to clarify a couple quick things. Sorry for the record, Amy, Town Administrator Jim Johnson. Where did this all come from? It's a burden on the taxpayers. I just want to touch base on that. We put that in there at the request of both of our chiefs. They made it clear to me from the beginning, they wanted Walpole to be the responding department. We're the larger department in both ends. And we have more people, more qualified people responding, more full-time people responding, rather than Sharon. They're smaller departments. So they were adamant that they wanted to be the first responder. As far as, the benefits to the taxpayers, as part of the negotiation, I know you don't want to get too far into this, we were clear as far as the hotel tax, we're taking 77.5% of that. So we're benefiting on that end, because I was mindful of, the extra firefighters that are gonna be running over there with the ambulances, the calls that the police department are gonna be going there, and I wanted to make sure that we made that up in some way. So I was mindful of that when we talked about that. Okay.
Good. Any more?
I just had one quick
Yeah, sure,
question
sure.
for the chief. Both, actually. It's a double-edged question, yeah. From looking at the site, and a vehicle that wants to either proceed to go south on Route 1 or west on High Plain Street, does the site provide both a legal and safe way to do that?
Yes, I think it does. And like was mentioned, there's existing driveways there right now. I never have liked that one closer to the intersection, but the one that's set away from the intersection is good. And I heard about the signage and everything and the no right turns. That is very important to us. I'd actually like to see that more on Route 1. We just had, the other night, we just had a vehicle pull out of the Red Wing and took a left. And it went northbound, southbound lane, we had a head-on collision, so. Anytime that we can, turn those driveways out the right way and making sure there's enough signage that doesn't happen is very important. I know we all live here and we're always up and down Route 1, so we're familiar, but when somebody comes from out of state visiting to go to a Patriots game and they're pulling out of one of the hotels, then it's nice.
And that's what's gonna stay here.
Yeah, they that type of thing happens, so I'm glad to see that that was taken into consideration with this.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Did you want a response from the fire chief also, Drew?
Well, I think it was pretty adequately answered, I guess, if they're comfortable with that.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Chairman, especially his last hearing. I was trying to paraphrase Mr. Yanovich's letter, and I don't think to the satisfaction of anybody. We actually have the deputy from the building department to answer any questions, because I know zoning enforcement, which is squarely under this board's concern, was a question.
Sure.
And our town engineers here.
Hi, how you doing? Jim Crowley, Deputy Building Commissioner.
Deputy what?
Jim Crowley.
Deputy Building Commissioner.
Nice to meet you.
So one of the questions we had was, as far as enforcement of any decisions that are rendered by the Zoning Board of Appeals, how do you envision that working?
So we've had multiple meetings between Sharon and us. They have given the Walpole Building Department the jurisdiction on everything. So we get the full say on everything for the whole building. We do all the inspections. The benefit of that is we get all the permit fees. So we get a substantial amount of money coming to the town. Anything that you enforce, as on the zoning side, we make sure that it's enforced, or there is violations under the zoning law that we can enforce to make sure they cooperate with us and they stick to whatever attachments you put to the permits.
Do you know of any cases where there's been a split lot where one town is being asked to enforce across the town border?
Yeah, we've experienced with this. The Cleveland Circle in Brookline, Boston, that's where we came from. So we done it where 2/3 were in Boston, 1/3 was in Brookline. So we did jurisdiction mix with them where, again, Boston zoning is very limited. Brookline zoning is probably one of the toughest in the state. We're on the Brookline side, so we done a joint with them on their inspections. In this case, we get to take over the whole entire permit. We've done multiple jobs like this, and even, again, from the Brookline side, we've done the Cleveland Circle Cinema. We were doing a hotel that's coming, probably next year is going to be starting there. We were dealing with the original permit, which is an 11-story building. So we've dealt with buildings this size. It's kind of standard. As I said, we have some in the middle of town that's going ahead. Just to give you an idea, the one at 95 West is actually a 6-story building. So we're used to it.
And if the applicant decided to go to 6 stories on this site, in the Sharon part, what would you have for jurisdiction on that?
Again, we get full 100% jurisdiction on it. There would be a cost expense on the owner for the simple fact it's a combination of how you build the structure. So you can do a wood frame at 3 stories. If you do a podium frame, which they're suggesting, you get up to 4 stories. Then your sprinkler system and which configuration you use the sprinklers give you a bonus floor. What you make the outside facade of the building works at 3rd floor, so it all depends what combination you put together. It depends your height of your building under building code. Again, the taller you go, the more expensive it is. So if we keep it 4 on our side, they're going to have to completely alter the Sharon side. To us, it's standard. It falls back on the owner how they have to meet the building code, which suggests you have to alter the sprinkler system, what the facade's going to be made of, all again on how high you're going.
Okay, so I appreciate your experience and what you've just described, I understand that. But what about the enforcement? How do you enforce something that's not in the town of Walpole?
So
Our town council can chime in.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, town council, because I think that's better for you to answer that.
Yeah, no, I agree. The intermunicipal agreement, as you know, pursuant to chapter 40, section 4A, municipalities can enter into cooperative agreements for shared services and to allow one municipality to undertake services in the other. The clear language of the intermunicipal agreement that was executed between Walpole and Sharon, that was not an agreement that involved Optima, but obviously involved their property, delineates those responsibilities and specifically anticipates this very issue and places that authority and responsibility with the town of Walpole. So as indicated by the deputy, the fees would come to the town of Walpole and the jurisdiction would be with the town of Walpole. That is designated under the intermunicipal agreement and is recognized by the town of Sharon. This is not an uncommon situation. I've dealt with a number of intermunicipal agreements with numerous municipalities throughout the Commonwealth, and it's always important because You have sometimes differing requirements in the various jurisdictions, and that's always a huge burden upon the developer to address that. And it's a difficulty, just as reference. You've got one building, and you can't have disparate treatment from one room in the hotel to the next. So in this case, you look to who is the more appropriate entity. And again, it's important to note that all these agreements included financial benefits to counteract any of the burdens. In this case, the town of Walpole would receive any fees and would have the jurisdiction. So that is specifically addressed in each municipal agreement and acknowledged and recognized by the town of Sharon as well. We did work with Sharon Town Council to undertake this agreement and make sure that the town of Sharon understood and recognized and agreed to the obligations of the agreement.
Okay, any other questions for the building inspector? Okay, thanks. Did you have any?
Nope.
Okay, Phil?
Unless you wanted to.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I gave you a report at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I think a lot has been discussed about the economics of the project in terms of how to make a project work here. I kind of looked at the criteria for a variance and focused on the last one that talks about, can this be granted without derogating from the intent of the bylaw? So I went and I looked up the purposes listed under the general provisions. And a lot of these things, I think, not only does this project not derogate from them, but it helps to promote them. So the first one listed is to lessen congestion in the streets. I think we have pretty good expert testimony saying that the traffic will in fact be improved and that this is a dangerous intersection as it exists. Another one is to secure safety from fire, flood, panic, congestion, confusion, and other dangers. We've had the fire and the police chief here explaining how they're going to manage this building for 911 calls and fires and so on. So you look at that, and then you see, I mean, a bunch of these things I think are supported by this project. One of them is to support the economic well-being of the town. So talking about the finances and how this is going to impact the taxpayers as well as the surrounding businesses, I think is important to consider. And I do think that this project adds to that. The Economic Development Commission also submitted a memo that voiced their support for this project and feel it would be a good investment for the area. So that's all I have.
Okay, Phil, anything else?
I guess with that, Mr. Chairman, just to summarize, if you will, again, if the board was so inclined to vote favorably, we'd ask that you make a motion on our behalf to reduce the height from 65 down to 62 feet, as I said before. Attorney Reich pointed out, and I agree with him, nothing today that was presented forces you to vote yes or no.
Absolutely.
This is still, I just want to make sure that
this board,
I'm
we get
agreeing
it.
with him. However, that said, I believe you have sufficient evidence, if you will, that has been presented to allow you to vote favorably if you so choose. I very rarely get a case that's this analogous as the Wayman and Brookline, excuse me, not Brooklyn, to what we're doing here. I was actually able to answer Bob's question about hardship through the appeals court rather than my own opinion, which I am very happy to be able to do so. So I believe we meet that. We're actually more unique than what was found in Brooklyn per town council. We get the town lines just to add on to the variety of circumstances that are coming to play on this lot. We would respectfully submit that there is no adverse effect to the town. We've heard from the department heads themselves, or the chiefs, they're not just department heads, and I believe their testimony can stand on its own without any amplification from me. I understand it's not a zoning consideration, but practicality does always come into play. If the town of Walpole is responsible for something, there's a cost to that. I will submit again that Attorney Reich and the town administrator have sufficiently mitigated that. But that's certainly for the board to decide if you believe them or not. And as far as the derogation from the bylaw, I don't believe that allowing a fifth-story rectangular building set back 154 feet from the property line is going to in some way nullify the intent of the highway business district. I'd also mention that a hotel use, the use, I'm not talking height, but the use is actually one of those allowed in highway business, so it's clearly, this is a use the town wants on Route 1. Otherwise it would root special permit or what have you. So again, nothing is binding on the board, but I think this is about as strong a case as I've been able to put for your consideration as I've had. And so I would respectfully ask that you vote affirmatively to grant both the special permit, and not that we've glossed over it, but I also don't want it to get lost in the weeds. We did ask for a special permit to alter non-conforming parking, and basically, just to summarize that, closing off the entrance closest to the traffic light on Route 1, and as a result, moving 8 spaces that are already existing inside of the setback into the area that's closed off, and we're adding an additional 2. The bylaw clearly allows us to add up to 50% of the floor area. In this case, we don't have a floor, but we have a parking area, and there are considerably more than 4 spaces in that area. So we don't come close to the 50%. So we believe dimensionally we're okay. As far as the expanding from 8 to 10, and as far as the alteration goes, that's again clearly allowed inside of the bylaw. As far as the height variance, again, I think I've given as good a presentation as we've been able to, and amassed a large body of evidence that would allow you to grant the variance if you so choose. 2 other, I won't even say issues, but comments have percolated around, one being the location of fire hydrants, and the other, how do we not, because it is allowed by right, end up with 2 additional floors in Sharon. My assertions aside, we would absolutely stipulate, however we wanted to word it, that either the entire building would not exceed 62 feet, or the roof would be continuous. Again, it's a semantic thing, but we have no problem stipulating as a condition of approval that we're building a rectangle. However we want to phrase that, that's what we're trying to do. We have no interest, and we're perfectly happy to put it on record that we're not going to, 2 months from now, change the plan and add stories over in Sharon. Not what we want to do, and again, we stipulate that as a condition of approval. We've talked with both towns' fire chiefs, because water keeps coming up. I know it's not a zoning consideration, but I'm willing to put that one on the record as well. We'd stipulate as a condition of approval, if you thought it was appropriate or necessary, that prior to submitting a site plan to the planning board, we'll move the location of the hydrants so that they're both totally in Walpole. Rumors being what they are, there's some concern that if there's a fire hydrant in Sharon, that somehow we're going to provide water and sewer to Sharon. Again, totally not what we're trying to do. And if that was a concern, so I believe it came through community planning and development, that some people were, not from you, just through you, from the Sewer and Water Commission. So I don't necessarily think that one is particularly a zoning issue, but again, go on record saying we're not trying to give water to anybody outside of this project. And if that helped, we certainly, again, would stipulate as a condition of approval that we're going to do it anyways, but my word is not on record at the Registry of Deeds. We're happy to do so. With that, Mr. Chairman, unless you have any further questions, I have nothing further to present.
I have a question, John.
Sure.
Do you have variances that you have to acquire in Sharon?
No.
What about the 100-foot wetland? There is a zoning issue with respect to the 100-foot wetland in Sharon.
There's a 75-foot no-touch zone.
This is zoning, though. This is zoning. You might look into that.
We can ask, but
Yeah,
I
just,
what I can tell you happened in Sharon, because we've finished the permitting over there.
oh, you have?
We have.
Okay.
We've got the permits, they're on record, 20 days is expired.
Okay,
But
That
we
was my-
discussed this with Joe Kent, went over with the engineer, and we have received site plan approval, and there you do need a special permit for a hotel. We've received that as well, and they approved the plans as drawn.
okay.
So,
And we have an order of conditions.
Yeah, yeah,
It's all-
yeah.
It's all done.
and that does address, because we do touch the 75 foot.
Yes, you do, yeah.
But that is specifically addressed in their order of conditions,
Okay.
and again, that's done and on record.
Okay, thanks.
I could make a comment. This isn't any, this is sort of a general comment. I guess where I'm coming from, with regard to having Walpole shares of, have a lion's share, police, I understand, and now I'm looking at fire and I'm thinking, yes, we are gonna get the tax, we're gonna get the taxes 77%, that's fine. But I'm thinking more in terms of manpower in a fire. And again, I'm just making a general sense of where I'm coming from. We have these 2 new buildings downtown. We have one coming up on Summer Street, and I'm thinking, how far can you spread yourself if you have multiple fires? And if part of this is in Sharon, I feel as though there ought to be some mechanism where they could bear some responsibility, because it's a lot to expect the department. I mean, for the number of multifamily dwellings that we're going to have, that could be an issue. And I guess that's where I'm coming from with regard to the expectation, even though I hear and I do understand the intermunicipal agreement that has gone all, and that I can understand. But I'm looking beyond that at what the ramifications of that agreement might turn out to be. That's just my comment.
Thank you. Okay. Bob, anything?
You want to ask for public comment?
Yeah.
Is there-
Public comments from anybody? Yes.
Just to the last comment, if the chief could talk about mutual aid, the fact of the matter is, you might have 4 towns
That's true.
at one fire.
This is true.
So there is a sharing of manpower, person power nowadays. So that if there was a fire event there, I'm sure that the chief would be there, the Sharon chief would be there. If it got too big, the Foxborough people would be there. So I don't, respectfully, don't see that issue being an issue for the town. If there was one downtown and it overwhelmed them, Sharon would be there. That's how they work.
With your permission, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, I very rarely can actually just ask the chief to address that.
This is a rarity.
I think it
You
would
are
be far
right.
better for him to do so than Mr. Waluka and myself.
Thank you again. As was just stated, we rely heavily on mutual aid now as it is because of our manning, so this isn't out of the norm for us. If we can't respond to something, we ask our neighbors to respond. We work hand in hand with not just the town of Sharon, who's on this agreement, but Foxborough, all of our surrounding towns. And we work very heavily with the town of Norwood and Westwood as well. So the call gets made, we'll make sure someone gets there, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Town council.
If I may, just a brief comment on that point, since, I was heavily involved in the negotiation of both the water and sewer agreements as well as the intermunicipal agreement. And the intent of the intermunicipal agreement was to recognize, and all these agreements were to recognize the very issues that are being raised. Both the police chief and the fire chief were integrally involved in that process. Police chiefs and fire chiefs on both sides had comments and provided further revisions to the agreements. The agreements were undertaken with the cooperation and input of those departments. And in addition, I think we will recall that we had a heavy-duty negotiation session to extract as much financial benefit for the town of Walpole as we could. I know that's not particularly pertinent to the considerations on the zoning side, but I just want to make it clear that in terms of the so-called burdens, and I understand the intent of that, we try to address all of that in these agreements, both financially and with extreme concern to the needs and considerations of the chiefs on both sides. So I think it needs to be recognized that they were integral in negotiating these agreements. We didn't write, those sections we didn't write on our own. We got the input from the professionals, and I think that everybody was comfortable with where we wound up, and I think that is reflected in the agreements.
When were those agreements?
When? Looking at we've got agreements, they date back, I know just like the mitigation agreement, the town of Walpole was from May 28th, 2019, so they're all in about that time frame. So we have water, sewer, intermunicipal agreement, and mitigation agreement. There's also a separate agreement with the town of Sharon, development agreement. So everybody cooperated in this process.
Okay.
One more comment.
So very rarely do we have so many department heads and departments here.
I know,
Okay.
in fact,
Use this more often.
The purpose of this
you know,
is really to show.
I actually have a note here
I'm
that
not
says,
Yeah.
my note here, when I saw everybody show up, it would have been helpful if there was this much of a turnout for the 40B on
Absolutely.
Burns Ave.
Absolutely.
Because the people from East Walpole were here, and,
And notice that.
yeah,
So I think you're gonna have this type of support at your meeting in a couple of weeks for sure.
at the South Walpole hearing, I'm sure.
Just, so a few comments on my behalf. So the Board of Selectmen's obviously supportive of this. Very rarely, in my tenure here, I don't ever remember entering into an agreement like this one with a neighboring community. So when you get two boards of selectmen to agree to something, that's a great thing. When you get the Sewer and Water Commissioner and the Board of Selectmen agrees to something, that's kind of a rarity at times on an agreement like this. This project's gonna generate revenue not only for the taxpayers, but for the water ratepayers for the town of Walpole too, and for the sewer ratepayers. I've actually built the sewer and water budgets, some of them, some parts of them contingent upon this project going through. They're gonna help to balance the budget on that end. So it's gonna contribute in multiple areas. Part of the agreement is, the applicant's gonna give us some mitigation to offset some of the expected road work that's gonna need to go down there, the wear and tear on the roads, the wear and tear on our DPW trucks. So it's just, my point here is, we've all kind of come together to try to work with the developer on this one, because we see an opportunity here, an economic development opportunity, an opportunity to bring more people into Walpole without the burden of the school system. And it's really gonna be the burden, a lot of it's gonna be on the police and fire. And as far as the police and fire, the numbers there, we've worked hard over the last 3 or 4 years to increase the numbers. We've gone from, when I first started, from 40 officers to 47 officers in this new budget. We've gone from 7 officers per shift to almost 10 across the board per shift. That's the most we've ever had in both departments, and we're gonna continue to add officers. This project's gonna help us continue to add to the police and fire, increase the ambulance numbers, because it's a big picture, it's a lot big of a piece of a big puzzle, and it just helps contribute to that without the burden of, how many school children, what's the number, because that's a big factor in our budget setting process too. So that's just kind of the point, and your point's well taken, Susan. If you need us there, we're gonna be there. It was a good point on the Burns Ave comment. We're gonna be there for the other 3 40Bs. If you want us, we'll come, just ask. I think
Absolutely.
we have a great asset in Ashley here, and Amy's doing a great job too, so, I'm happy that we have both of them on staff that, just ask us and we'll
Are we
be
gonna
there.
be adding to the building department?
Building department, building commissioner's office, you mean? They're just moving into the new office on Monday.
With all these,
And so with Jim,
Just asking.
we've never had
As a given.
a position of deputy building commissioner. That's relatively new within the last year. So we've gone from a commissioner, a deputy, we've also added another full-timer, so that's 3
need
full-timers.
'em.
Before, we only had commissioner, full-timer, and a part-timer. So I'm trying to add more, so mindful of that. So, thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
That, Mr. Chairman, again, I respectfully ask the board's favorable vote, but I would request that we close the hearing.
Okay. The applicant requests to close the hearing, so is there any further discussion before we close the hearing? Okay, well, you good? Okay. This is just to close the hearing at the request of the applicant. All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. In voting on this tonight, we're gonna break it down in town council. I'm gonna make sure that you guide us correctly on this. We have before us a variance. What is the normal procedure? Do you take a variance first or the special permit? Or does it matter?
Mr. Chairman, in this case, I don't think it necessarily matters, but I think that the special permit would be secondary to the variance, so I would recommend that you consider the variance first.
Okay. So, for the variance, you wanna read it? Yeah.
I did prepare a draft if you so choose to
No,
use it.
we're gonna just read it out of what was the legal ad.
Do we need to amend to 62?
You usually have.
Right.
That was usually your first vote on our.
Let's vote to amend first.
Okay, it's not gonna make a difference.
The plans,
There can be a motion on the table, and then the motion can be amended.
Okay.
are the plans being modified to show 62?
The architecturals will, but you're
Hmm.
actually not voting on the architecturals, so that
Okay.
we would just change the request. When we actually produce them, that will show.
Are the plans being modified to show this change in the hydrant, which was
They
brought
will
up
be,
tonight, which
yes.
wasn't a zoning board thing?
They will be before we submit site plan approval.
Oh, speaking of which, I guess it's a procedural question. Are you going to planning board after this?
Yes.
Okay.
So first I'll read the variance, and then we'll amend, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's an application for a variance under section 6, dimensional regulations, table 6B1 of the dimensional regulations of the zoning bylaws to allow a maximum building height of no more than 65 feet in 5 stories, where 45 is allowed and 4 stories are allowed.
That's the motion before us. That's what the applicant applied for. Could I have somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Jane, second by Suzanne. Okay, any further discussion on that?
I'd like to move to amend the
you wanna-
motion to reduce the height to 62 feet
Okay,
at the request of the applicant.
okay. So we have an amendment to reduce it to 62 feet at the request of the applicant. Could I have that, Bob, are you making that motion?
Yes.
Second.
Motion made by Bob, second by Suzanne. Any further discussion on amending to 60, now it states everything that Suzanne said, but
62.
instead of 65 feet, it now says 62 feet. Okay. Any further discussion on, and this is just the variance,
Just the
only
amendment.
the amendment?
Amendment to the
Okay,
variance.
Okay,
Amendment to the
right. So
motion.
this is to make the, so now we're gonna vote on amending it to 62 feet. This is not for the main motion. Okay. All those in favor of amending to 62 feet, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, so it's amended to 62 feet. Okay, now this is for the actual variance.
Shall I read it again?
Sure, as it's
It's an
now.
application for a variance under section 6, dimensional regulations, table 6B1 of the dimensional regulations of the zoning bylaw to allow a maximum building height of no more than 62 feet in 5 stories where 45 feet is allowed and 4 stories are allowed.
Okay. And this is for a variance, which has a higher burden than a special permit. Okay, all those in favor of approving this, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have Rick, Jane, and Bob approving the variance. Okay, all those opposed? Aye. So 2 opposed. Okay. Next, we have for the special permit. Do you want to
read
read
it?
it? Yep.
It's an application for a special permit under 9(3)A and 9(3)C, the zoning bylaws, to allow alteration, expansion, or extension of a non-conforming parking within the setback as may be amended.
Okay. Could I have somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Jane. A second on that? Second by Rick. Okay, any further discussion on the special permit? Okay, and this involves the traffic flow and the parking and all that in the site plan. Okay. Town council, do you have anything to add as guidance on this?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, Bob? you do? Okay, okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, it's been moved, seconded, no further discussion. All those in favor of the special permit, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. Okay, okay, so both carry.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So we've been at this for an hour and a half, so we're gonna take a few minutes for a break, and then we're gonna continue with the case for down the road.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to give people a chance to clear the room.
To raise their rates, so that way they're flushing out some of that, but the people who own it say that their lease is restricted. I don't know the whole backstory to it, but there's something more that, you know.
I know it got sold a few years ago. It's a family.
Yeah, right.
You got stuff for us? Good.
I do have some
We like stuff.
I have an original copy. This is a letter John Glosser crafted, just
Okay.
in response to that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I wonder if they still function. I think it's because they get a long term. Well, a lot of them do Section 8 housing. Right. Overflow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have plans, yeah?
Well, John does. I probably have them. Oh, I do. It's a little folder thing.
Okay.
You got a copy?
I get a copy.
I just need one. Could you share one?
Sure.
John didn't give me, no, this one.
Hey, you can have mine,
No.
I'll share with Jane.
Yeah, we can.
This,
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, yeah.
I'll share right here, we share.
Wait a minute, I have two.
I already
you have
got
two,
that.
okay, there you go.
Now we know, there we go.
Is it in the packet?
Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start back up with the hearing for 63 Beethoven. And
Chief.
we've got, I'll read the legal notice. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Appeals, Town of Walpole, will hold a public hearing in the main meeting room, Town of Walpole, on Wednesday, February 5th at 7 PM on the application of Joseph Carey, case number 01-20, with respect to property located at 63 Beethoven Avenue, Walpole, Mass., zoning district rural. Application is for a special permit under section 5B2 of the zoning bylaws to allow an accessory in-law suite in an existing single-family dwelling. And we have some correspondence. We have from Paul Barry, who just left. Fire Department has reviewed the plans and the application of the above noted location. We have the following comments to offer the board regarding this special permit. If the request for the special permit is approved by the board, building plans will have to be submitted to the fire department for review, and an inspection will be conducted prior to occupancy. We have a letter from the Board of Health. The Board of Health, at its January 7th, 2020 meeting, voted that they have one concern regarding the special permit, that the current septic system was designed only for four bedrooms. An upgrade of the existing septic system to support a fifth bedroom would be required, and the septic plan submitted to the Board of Health for review and approval. We also have from Conservation. The Conservation Commission has no comments at this time regarding the above referenced property. We have from Planning Board. We are in receipt of your request, and however, there are no planning comments at this time. Thank you for your opportunity to comment. We have from the town engineer, who I believe just left. We have received the plans for 63 Beethoven Zoning Board of Appeals. We offer the following comments. 1, the applicant should furnish to the board a summary of the requirements listed in section 5B 2C on page 30 of the zoning bylaws. There will not be any additional sewer and water entrance fees as long as the addition is attached. The application appears to be in order, and the site plan provides the desired information to demonstrate compliance with zoning. And number 4, there is no proposed grading on the site plan as the addition is proposed on piers, and existing grades shall remain. The board could impose a condition stating that no regrading is approved unless a grading plan is provided to the building inspector. So those are the letters from the town boards. We have the plans in front of us. If you would, please introduce yourself and explain what you're proposing.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Donald Seaberg. I'm with Gloucester Engineering, and with me tonight is Joseph Corey, the owner of the property. We are proposing to construct an in-law apartment. You can see it. I'm just going to step away just a bit. Basically, they're going to be utilizing a portion of the existing building, and then they're going to be doing an addition off to the side with a covered enclosed porch. That's the extent of the construction. It has 2 means of access being provided. The total square foot of the new addition, the in-law apartment, is 968
square feet.
square feet, sorry. It's located on 63 Beethoven Street, which is off of West Street if you're heading towards North Fork, almost on the North Fork line, basically. And some of the comments, I just go through the comments. Now, they asked for a summary, which I handed out to you. This goes through each of the criteria for the special permit. So we could go through those quickly, if you would like.
Sure.
One is it's an accessory, actually, the zoning is in rural. An accessory in-law suite. It's going to be, will be separated, it's a separated unit in an existing single-family dwelling. When you go through B, it says that the first criteria is that it can't be held in separate ownership, which it's not. Accessory in-law suite will be located in an existing single-family dwelling, and owner of the dwelling will occupy the principal dwelling unit, which is in fact the case. The next one is the accessory in-law suite will be occupied by individual within the 3rd degree of kinship, which is his parents, basically, so that's being met. The property owner and then will record in the Norfolk Registry of Deeds a certified copy of the decision, which we will do. And then upon change of ownership, the new owner will notify the building commission, which will allow that. So if that happens, that will take place. Lot size, the minimum requirement is 15,000, and the lot is 48,423 square feet. The size of the in-law suite is 968 square feet, which is more than the minimum of 250, and it's less than the maximum. They also can't be greater than 33% of the total building size, which the total square foot of the building from the assessors is 5,538 square feet, which if you multiply that by 0.33 is 1827, then 968 is less, so it meets that criteria. Interior space used to calculate the minutes. We had the architect calculate the interior space, which is part of this handout. Then the next one is 2 exterior landings, neither of which are covered and neither of which are more than 50 square feet, both set on with stairs within the building set lines, which is met. The proposed addition will match the outside appearance of the existing single-family home, which you have architecturals which show it to be the same. It's going to blend right in. Then next one is all dimensional requirements comply with applicable sections of the Walpole bylaw, which they do. And there will only be one accessory in-law suite, which is what's proposed. They're going to be only utilizing one water meter, the existing one. And there will be no lodges or other people in there, which they will not. And then the parking does comply with the section of the Walpole bylaw. We also, I don't know, you got a letter from Amy Messenger which was supportive of this.
Yes, Amy's
Which
right here with
basically
us.
says the
So,
same.
Amy, nice memo on that.
So
Do you
that
do
goes through that, and
just
then,
excuse me, do you do that for all the cases now?
It's new.
Yeah.
My
Okay.
first one. Oh, thank you.
No, it's,
so the other thing, in response to the Board of Health, in the packet that I handed out, there is a text from the Board of Health, which the septic system has been approved.
so, yeah, we just saw that, but that was an email. Do you have, I guess what we would do is just, we'll make it a condition.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we had received an email from them, and that's, just to say that they had reviewed it. We're adding an extra line. And that, I think, pretty much sums up the request.
Okay, so let me start with a few questions for you or the homeowner. Is the plan still to build this addition on piers and do no grading?
Yes,
Okay, so no foundation,
correct.
it's gonna be on piers, okay. And as we look at it, you have an egress, I'm looking at the front elevation,
Okay.
and we see there's an egress out towards Beethoven Ave. Is there going to be a walkway or a driveway on that side of the house at this point?
No, so the driveway we have will remain. There's gonna kind of be like a landscape sort of walkway across the front, then we'll get around to that area.
Okay. Good. And let's just, I guess the other thing that we always look at is how does this connect into the house? Is it, do you want to explain how it connects?
Yeah, so it goes through the kitchen, so it's kind of like your standard colonial where you go through the kitchen and then it goes into the dining room area, and then off. When you go through the dining room area, you go to the left, which in the front of the house is probably what would be like a formal living room, if you will. So it's right through the kitchen into the dining room.
And the doors to enter the in-law suite are, what kind of doors are they, or is it open?
open, like, as far as from the one house to the other,
Yeah.
right on it, open.
And I think that's what I'm trying to see, it's,
Yeah, where is that on the plan?
I think it's near screen porch.
can I borrow your glasses?
Oh, okay.
I think I need more power. Are these Walpoles? Nope.
Nope.
Are those prescription?
I feel like going
Yeah,
like this.
So do you have a,
Like a like that.
is there a bigger plan for this? Because we're trying to read off of this plan.
We're all trying to go like this on our phone.
I say it's not what it used to be.
At least I am. These don't work either.
I'm sorry, but I do not have the full-size architecturals.
That's all right, we'll manage.
Just come and show
So,
you.
yeah, why don't you come on up here and,
Just, yeah, just come up and draw on John's and we can all look at John's. Please.
So the,
Is it there? That's what I'm thinking.
just let him explain.
so house-wise, house is here. It's the house, my house, right? And so then this right here is the opening. From the current house into this goes into what would actually be the dining room right now.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
so dining room here.
Yep.
What is this right here?
Well, so this is, I'm sorry, so this is what is right now what you would consider the existing dining room. We're gonna be, this is gonna end up being part of the in-law here.
Okay,
So there's gonna be like laundry room, bathroom's gonna be here, bedroom's gonna be here, and then this is the addition part, which will be like the family room in the kitchen.
okay, and this also is new?
This is new here,
New.
yeah, off to the side, yep.
Okay, so existing, and that is going to be
That'll be a bedroom.
a bedroom?
That's
on the-
existing.
Bedroom towards the front of the house?
Yep.
Okay.
Dining room?
I guess that's.
Yeah, so the dining room will end up being bathroom, laundry room.
Yep.
And then this will open up into like family room and then kitchenette.
Okay, and what we're looking at is to make sure that it's not a separate apartment.
Completely separate, right, yeah,
And
so
that-
we'd worked with the architect, who would come with, and met, I think, with the town, or John did as well, to kind of make sure. So there's two openings. There's actually gonna be the opening from the kitchen, going into what's the existing dining room. But then also, there will be an opening when you come through the front door, and you can walk into the left right now into what would sort of be the formal living room currently, which will be the bedroom. There will be a door there also.
Okay.
So there actually will be two kind of entrances from the home.
But from the home, is there a door right here, or does?
There's not, that's open.
Fine,
Yeah.
that's what,
Yeah.
that's what,
That's what we need.
that's what we need.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. And the reason why, because I know people are watching at home and stuff, what we're trying to make sure is that people don't create separate, totally separate units. This is part of your home, and that's the intent of the in-law suite, is that it is part of the home. It's not a separate unit. At least that's the way the zoning board of appeals interprets that bylaw, so, okay. Anybody have any questions? And parking, is, Amy, did you address parking in your short memo?
Yes,
Yeah.
so
And it's sufficient?
nothing is being proposed to be altered, but, you can easily fit 4 cars if needed.
Okay,
Looks good.
looks good to Suzanne. Okay, is there anybody here, any neighbors or anybody from the public to speak on this? Obviously, all your neighbors were notified, and did you meet with any of them?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they were good with it? Yeah,
Supportive.
that's good.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know about supportive, they were, you sure you want to do this?
Public, this is a public meeting, you're on the air, so, so, no, I think it's, I think this is it's a good design in, it's not a separate unit, and there's no question that it flows as part of the house, so that's good. Parking looks good. The one condition that the zoning board would put on this is it requires Amy, would you note this? It requires an updated septic. which needs to go through the Board of Health, so that would be required before you can get your building permit. Are you tracking with that?
Yeah, it is approved, so it's
Okay.
already been done, we just, all
The
we have
plan's
is the
been done,
email.
or the plan's been done, or the
Yeah,
actual?
the plan's been done
Okay.
and approved.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But we're gonna just put that as a condition, because we don't have the stamped
You don't
plan,
have
we
the
don't have the
stamped
stamp plan in front of us. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay. So, could I have a motion to accept the plan showing the in-law suite at 63 Beethoven Ave, plans dated December 3rd, 2019. That's the plot plan. And the architectural plans, I don't know if we're gonna be able to read the date on this. Wow. Drew, you're a little younger than everybody else. Can you read that?
Let's man up, Drew.
September
15th.
September 15th, 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
Put the gauntlet down like that.
So, based on the architectural plans of September 18th, 15th, 2019, and with that one, our regular standard conditions for an in-law, and that one additional condition for the septic plan by the Board of, approved by the Board of Health.
And didn't Carl Baldoff want, he wanted something. He wanted the list of the requirements.
Well, that's sort of what Amy.
That's what Amy
Amy
did.
Amy
Okay.
provided.
And there's no grading, yeah, all right, we're good.
And actually, the other condition is no site grading. It's redundant, but that's, okay. So standing conditions, those two conditions, could I have that motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Boy, they're good.
Tandem.
Moved by Jane, second by Suzanne. Any further discussion on 63 Beethoven? Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. But, does the applicant want to close the hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so the applicant chooses to close the hearing. This is just to close the hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Now, back to the motion that's on the table to approve this plan. Any further discussion? Everybody's good with it? Okay, voting on this will be the regular members. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, good luck. And you know how this whole process works with the 20-day appeal from the time it's filed,
Yes,
so.
and, you'll be signing this at your next meeting?
Bob will come in during the week, once it's typed up, and he'll be able to sign it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good night.
Yep. Okay. And the next case we have is 1363 and 1391 Main Street. This is for a special permit, and I know you've been here, listening to a lot of things tonight, so thank you. And what we're gonna do is, we will let you present and open up the hearing tonight, and then we'll probably continue it, because there's gonna be a lot of questions on the project size. But we look forward to hearing what you're proposing. So, I will read the public notice. Notice is hereby given that the Board of Appeals of the Town of Walpole will hold a public hearing in the main meeting room, Town of Walpole Town Hall, on Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, at 7 PM on the application of Sayed Halabi, case number 0220, with respect to property located at 1363 to 1391 Main Street, Walpole, Mass., zoning District B. Application is for a special permit under section 5B3G of the zoning bylaws to allow second and third floor residential units. And we have some comments from the different town boards. The planning board says that they are in receipt of the requests for comments. However, there are no planning board comments at this time. We have a letter from Conservation at the January 22nd, 2020 meeting. The Conservation Commission stated that the applicant will need to file with the Conservation Commission due to a portion of the property being within the buffer zone. You're tracking on that?
Yes.
Okay. We also have from the Sewer and Water Commissioners. The Board of Sewer and Water Commissioners reviewed and discussed all available information with regard to the above subject property. There is not sufficient information for this commission to provide comments at this time, and we would like the applicant to appear before the board to discuss their plans for water and sewer at this location. Have you reached out to the Water and Sewer Department?
Not yet, but we plan to meet with conservation as well.
Okay, good. And we also have from Carl Baldoff, Town Engineer. He has received the plans, and he offers the following comments. The proposed site driveway have grades of 16% down into a parking garage and 10% up from Route 1A to a grade parking and access to retail area on the first floor. The town does not have design perimeters for driveway slopes, but these are steep, especially for an approach to a heavily traveled road such as Main Street. We suggest that the design, which allows entry to the parking garage at the rear, may help reduce the slopes. He goes on further. 2, the applicant will be required to apply to Mass DOT for an access permit for curb cuts. 3, in a general review meeting on Friday, January 18th, 2020, other departments expressed concerns for the lack of an adequate turnabout for trash removal, delivery vehicles, and public safety vehicles. 4, both the engineer and conservation are concerned that the current design allows for a significant portion of the proposed parking aisle to sheet flow back to Main Street. Concerns exist for water quality as well as icing on the relatively steep slope. Mass DOT will also have a say in this issue as the curb cuts are within their purview. 5, it should be noted that the plans are preliminary and show basic layouts and some utility services, but are lacking detail. DPW will provide additional detailed comments when the applicant files with the planning board for site plan review and Conservation Commission for notice of intent. Finally, number 6, the applicant has not provided any traffic-related information, proposed volume, site distance, and impact to adjacent driveways. The board may wish to consider requiring this. Okay, so those are the comments from the town boards. We take those into consideration. And as I said, what we'd like to do is hear about your proposal, present it to the board, and also this gives people in town a first chance to take a look at this proposal for Main Street.
Perfect.
And if you are, just for people watching at home, I think it would be helpful if you told us what's the existing property there right now.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Dave Halby. I'm in a contract to purchase the property at 1363, 1391 Main Street. Right now, at the property, there is a Leo's Pizzeria and 1A Auto Sales behind it. There's 2 structures there that we're going to be proposing to tear down and build the proposed building that you see before you. It's in the business zone. It's 32,488 square feet. The proposal right now only requires a special permit. That's why we're before you. We're not asking for any variance. It was important for us to just stick to the zoning bylaw and not go through any variances. Work with the zoning bylaw as much as possible on this project. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lucio, my architect, and he'll go through the plans existing and proposed.
Let me start with that. Sorry. My name is Pujo Trabuco, I'm Trabuco Architects. I just want to start with this slide just to show you the relationship of the building. That purple is basically the site. It's in Main Street, Norfolk Street, and its adjacent properties are just basic industrial buildings. The site right, I'll give you a close-up. This is just a close-up of the site we're working in. Again, the site right now is a two-story wood frame structure, and it's also a 2-story garage in the back, and it's pretty much asphalt area. You can see on the existing site plan, you can see where the parking is and the existing structure, and the rest is basically green, just vacant. What we're proposing basically is underground structure containing 34 parking space. Entrance would be from Main Street to the left side of the structure. As in the next slide, you'll see a better concept of that. There'll be 34 parking spaces and vertical circulation stairs, elevators. This is the ground floor plan. Basically, it's, again, the entrance to the underground parking will be on the bottom right. The entrance to the parking in the space in the L-shaped area will be to the right of the building. The typical residential floors consist of 18 units. There's 2 one-bedroom units per floor, and the rest is the 16 units would be 2-bedroom units. There's, again, vertical circulation corridors in elevators. The third floor is typical, similar to the second floor plan on residential. Just the front elevation, just to show you the material we're proposing. The retail will have like a 4-stone, like just a rough base to the building, just separate the commercial space to the residential space above. Above we have this base with decks off of it or porches off of it, and we're thinking about a mixture of clapboards. There's panels on the base, just to accentuate those vertical elements to offset the horizontality of the building. And below double hung windows, and then the storefronts will be on the delineating the retail area. The garage door will be on the left. Just showing different elevation, sides, and rear elevation. It's just a rendering, just to show you Main Street, just for the setting. Again, the ground floor will be delineated with different material, rough, like a stone material, and again, the panels and clapboards on the bottom, just to give you an idea as you go down Main Street, basically. Again, this is just different views of what we are proposing. That will be the side of the. That's an overall rendering of it, just to show you how the building sits in the site. Again, there'll be parking on the right-hand side, pretty much for the retail space. The residential park will be all underground, and it will be a 3-story structure, retail, and 2 stories of residential use.
Just asking a question on that. So there's gonna be 2 curb cuts, one for the surface parking,
Yes.
and another one to get into the garage.
Yeah, the curb cut for the garage will be on the left-hand side of the building, and the right one for the surface parking will be on the right-hand side. That's it. I mean, if you want to go back to any slides, just, we can go back and.
No, I think it's important to realize this is about a 3/4 of an acre size lot, and these are, just artist renditions. And as far as the height of the building, you're talking 3 stories with parking underneath.
Yes.
Most, the scale of the area, that's one of the things that we're gonna look at is scale of the area, and also, heights of other buildings in that area, because that's what you're seeking is approval for the second and third levels.
For residential.
For residential.
Below
right.
the height and the requirements.
Right, below the height, but it's but putting residential units on Main Street in this district up to that, on those second and third floors, which there are places that have it on the second floor in that area, but I'm not sure how many are up to three stories there, but we can take a look at that.
Yeah, the one next to the Dunkin' Donuts, I believe, is a 3-story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Similar use, but I think.
It is,
the
yeah,
variance
very
is-
nice, yeah.
So,
The commercial on the first floor, is it just gonna have windows in the front or on the side too?
Well, right now, I just propose windows on the front. It's kind of hard to see we don't know what the tenant is. But right now, we're proposing just to have, like an exposure on the front, the windows.
Because, you know, the way the grading shows, you're gonna come from the street and go up. So, would you lose most of the area for windows?
Yeah, we could introduce some windows on the side as well, but again,
But all the access to the commercial would be from the front.
on the front.
All the windows that you see right now are in the front, but the access could be from the front and from the
Yeah,
back.
from the back as well.
And the way the zoning bylaws written, most of the parking, they want behind 25 feet, like 25-foot setback and beyond.
Right.
So to make it more convenient for customers going to retail stores, we put, you know, storefronts in the back as well. Just to make it easier for someone to walk to the store that they're going to, as opposed to parking in the back and walking all the way to the front.
There are entrances in the back of the property as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
All along the first floor, wherever there's parking, you'll have an entrance to one of the storefronts.
Okay.
How about the entrances to the residential space above? Is that,
They'll be in the back, that's in the back of the property.
The building's in an L shape,
Yeah, it's an L
if you
shape.
may, and you can see right in the corner of the L, inside corner of the L, that's where the main lobby is gonna be. And again, that's to make it easier for people, you know, parking, getting right to the nearest entrance as opposed to walk to the front of the building. And just so we can stay in harmony with the zoning bylaw and the way it's written, it calls for this.
Where does it show on there you get to the retail?
Oh, you mean the access, you mean like walkways? We haven't shown it yet, but all the walkways will be on the front, accessing the retail space.
We'll show that on a site plan if you wanna take a look at that.
Do you have the site plan?
There'll be walkways all along the inside of the L and walkways in the front of the building. We'll show them to you on the site plan we're proposing. So I'll just bring this forward. Kevin Riappel, DGT Associates, Project Civil Engineer. So, looking at the plan here, Main Street, the left entrance and driveway is for the garage under. Driveway on the right is for the surface parking here. We do have walkways up along the building here to gain access into the different entrances along that side of the building.
You can have a,
A lot of signage is gonna have to happen.
you can have a retaining wall along the side, because I think that the town engineer made the reference that the surface parking goes up.
Correct. So we are below the building height. I believe it's just under 36 feet, 40-foot allowable. It's a very tight balancing act because we have to get the garage in the ground, but we also have to drive up and over the garage to get to the parking area in the back. This was originally proposed to be around 10%. We have relooked at the grading in that area. We can reduce it down to 6%, which is much more comfortable. This driveway here is from the gutter line of the roadway, 28 feet back, is essentially flat. There's a very slight rise to the existing sidewalk area, and then it very slowly rolls down into the garage. So you would come up this relatively steep driveway from the garage, have a very flat area, very good sight in either direction. With the building being 25 feet back, there's, you know, adequate room to see safely in both directions there.
is the garage parking exclusively for the residential, or is it to be shared?
Well, we're targeting the tenants of the building, so either the business owners or the residential tenants. The goal here is to try and make most of the traffic going in and out of the site from the above-grade parking area. And try and get minimal traffic going in and out, activity if you may, from the garage underneath, just to, you know, not have issues with the two entrances into the building. Right now, we do have two curb cuts on the site, so we're just working with the existing curb cuts that we have. And we have initiated conversations with DOT. We know we will have to file with them for the curb cuts. They are aware that they are very wide curb cuts there today. We are formalizing them to both be 24-foot wide, which will comply with their requirements.
And when you say the current ones are wide, that's just because historically they've,
It's just the
Yeah.
way the site was developed, and it's
It's
very
an old
wide
site,
open
yeah.
going there.
so what you're saying is you'll standardize them to the current,
Exactly.
current codes and
Yep.
everything.
So will the parking be numbered downstairs, like the unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that kind of thing, or
That's
free
to be
parking?
seen depending on, you know, what we have for tenants for the commercial areas and how we want to balance it between the indoor parking and the outdoor parking.
Yeah, the only reason I mention that is, you know, if there's no way to turn around under there. So, you know, if you were a tenant and you had a parking space, you'd want to know it was available.
Yeah, I mean,
all
whoever
the
would be
time.
going into the basement would have access to the parking garage door. You know, it's not for public use, if that's what you're
Right,
asking,
okay.
yeah.
I'm thinking of the residential
Yeah.
tenants, yeah.
Yeah, no, whoever's gonna be going into the parking garage would have, you know, access, you know, with the remote or something to get the garage door open. We do have enough parking above grade to suffice for the commercial needs.
Okay, yep.
So we wouldn't have to get into the underground parking, for customers if we don't want to.
For the commercial, yeah, yeah.
Do you consider, is it feasible to use, just one of the curb cuts for access to both the garage and the surface? Like, is there a design that would accommodate that?
We did look at different designs, different locations for this garage door. We did look at bringing just this one driveway in and a garage down to the back. The wetland in the site is actually just off the site in the northeast corner here. We're trying to really limit the impact to that part of the site, limit the amount of pavement. It didn't really work well with the building design. You still have the same parameters. You gotta get up and over, and then you gotta come back down and around, so it wasn't very feasible. Actually, yeah, it would be more challenging, I felt, Right. going in and then you would have to turn around as opposed to a straight shot. Now, if it were for, you know, retail customers, business customers, you know, I would want it in the back, but given that it's gonna be limited traffic and just for the tenants of the building, it made more sense to make it happen in the front as opposed to the back. And again, with what Kevin's saying, we're in that 100-foot buffer zone for the wetlands, and we're trying our best. Right now, the building, all excavation is pretty much outside that 100-foot buffer zone. We just have parking in that buffer zone right now. So we're trying to really limit getting into that area.
And I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Also consider, that's one of the things that the town engineer referenced was the bit about the parking coming out to Main Street, and also, he in his letter, which do you have a copy?
Yeah.
That he talks about, parking on the back of the site. But I know you've looked at it, but, my expectation is there's gonna be some back and forth with this as you move forward.
We're gonna have to, yeah, we're gonna go back and forth a lot with site plan review.
With the
and-
other-
and
right.
meet all the requirements, of course, yeah.
What's the security gonna be like underground?
In what sense? Like access, you mean?
No, I'm pulling in, I'm by myself, it's 11 o'clock. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be in that parking garage, cause I just wanted to get some pizza, but I don't
Yeah,
know,
the
so I
access
go
to
in.
the access to the garage would just be with the tenants of
It's
the
got
building,
one
yeah.
of those things?
Yeah, just a garage door like you might have at
And
home.
what's the security if I live there?
Could I just answer a question, please? That's builds in Boston. One of the things that they do in Boston is there's video cameras all over the place in the
They're
garage.
gonna be all over?
Yeah, and there's a master, area with that gets controlled.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can do the same system in this place here, just to give security to people.
And Suzanne, in the plan, at least, because I looked at it earlier today, it's a rolling steel door.
It's a coiling door, yes.
Yeah, but the door goes up and down
Yes.
on Main Street, so
Oh.
it's not gonna be open all the time.
No.
So
Only
What
people,
about
you have,
queuing?
you have
What if there's
cat.
queuing?
Sorry?
What if there's queuing?
Like cars exiting, it would stay open because there'd be a sensor on it, it wouldn't close.
You talking about the cars coming out?
Yeah.
There's a 25-foot setback, there's 25-foot.
10 people go shopping at the same time, they all come home at the same time. What do we do?
It's highly unlikely. I wouldn't be able to answer that. They would have to wait to get in, but it's
You
highly
can't wait on the
unlikely
highway.
with an 18 unit to have 10 of the tenants.
Well, once you open the
shop.
door, I mean, again, you got access, and you open the door is open, and there's a runway going down to the garage. So you do have queuing for more than 10 cars if you want.
10?
If you look, I mean, if I can go through this. Yeah. You see the plan, there's a ramp, and actually, let me go to the parking area, you can see it better. See, all this can be used, I mean, that's for cars coming in and out.
So you can fit like maybe 3 cars.
25 feet, plus you have the ramp. So people coming out, the garage door, and then again.
And I could use the aisles as well.
How far is this accordion door from the highway, from the street?
25 feet.
25 feet. Just so you know, Walpole does not have I don't know if they have
This is
any
my first one.
underground parking. I know a lot of towns do, Dedham does a lot of it, but for us, it's new.
Very nervous about
Yeah.
the security part of it.
No, it's fine.
Anything else?
No, I was curious if there's I don't see in the zoning chart a sort of floor area ratio or anything like that, and I don't know that there is one that applies in this zone, but it's just, it strikes me as quite a dense development for the size of the lot. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, I just was curious as to whether the bylaw.
On the zoning, it's saying that we're allowed 40% coverage by structure. Right now, we're about 11,800 square feet is the footprint. We're allowed up to 12,996 square feet. So I think we're on 36% on coverage. And then where the special permit comes in is adding that second and third story dwelling units.
Yep. Yep.
So it doesn't really, I don't think the zoning bylaw works with that, they are.
No, not in
Lot
Walpole.
coverage.
Who's the owner of the property?
James Conway. It's on trust right now.
Mr. Conway, I thought he still owned that. He doesn't live there though, or anywhere near there.
No.
He lives in like South Walpole maybe.
Yeah, he is a Walpole resident.
So, a positive comment is that I think it will, anything done on that site will improve things. So, no, and I mean, this is just, you know,
Pizza's
we've
good,
looked at this section of Route 1A for a long time, and as you move down, you'll see different buildings have been cleaned up over time and just through the evolutionary process. And I think that, you know, that's what zoning's about, is
100%
making
agreed.
improvements over time, and I figured it was just a matter of time before something came in like this. You know, now comes the question, what's going to fit, what's going to be the right density, and all that. But I think that it's time to improve this block here, so
Agreed.
that's a positive statement. How about, are there any abutters here to speak on this? Do you want to speak on this, or what do you have to say?
I own the property that you're looking at on the street to the left and to the back of it. I think it's obviously, like you just
Do
said,
you want to just come up to the
Oh, yeah.
microphone, if you don't mind?
We want your face on TV.
Bill Galopoulos, 1415 Main Street. I own the property that's to the left and to the back of the property. Like Mr. Lee said, that anything on that site would improve that area, and I do agree with that. I just had a few questions about, we don't know what the business is going to be underneath. Is it going to be Leo's again? Are they going to continue that business? And the only reason I ask is, well, there's a few questions I had. Currently Leo's, because of the car dealership, you know, when people go to use that location, the trailers that come in there, the landscape trailers, the utility trucks, there's no room for them to park over there. And so they park in my lot. Looking at the entrance of this one here, for a landscape trailer to go in there to use, let's say if it's a restaurant, and he'll never be able to get out of there, because there's no turnaround. So have they used, is there any solution to that? You know, utility trucks, delivery trucks, it's gonna be residential, the moving trucks, how are they gonna get in and out to move those residents in and out of those apartments or condos? The fire trucks, how are they gonna put fires out on the side and the back of the building? So those are the, I'm not against this project, because I said, I've been looking at Leo's Pizzeria and that building for, I don't know, since 2009, and, you know, anything would improve that. So I'm not against it, I just had questions like, you know, to be answered.
And those are the same questions we have, and those will be addressed through the public hearing. And if you want to, you know, it's a public hearing, you're welcome to come to all the meetings, bring more people. But also, if you want to submit comments to the zoning board, we can make sure that those get addressed. Because I think what you're hearing from at least me and probably the other board members, like you said, you've been looking at it for a while, you wanted to
Yeah,
improve.
I'd love
but-
for improvements,
But
definitely.
we also want to make sure that it doesn't, a dense project like this doesn't flow over onto other people, the highway, that's what we've been focusing on, but I think you also make the point about your property. So there's ways that the applicant can design their project that will gain support from the zoning board, that makes your project better and protects your property and protects the people that live and travel through the town of Walpole.
Sure, but good luck.
Okay, yeah, did you have anything else to say on this?
I don't think.
Okay, but,
Thanks, Bill.
please, if you have issues, submit them in writing to Amy, and we'll make sure that we address your issues or any other abutters, so, thank you.
Thank you.
So I could respond to a couple of those questions.
Sure.
Regarding the commercial use, because of the limitations on the site, the actual size of the available area for parking, we can't have a restaurant in that first floor space. We wouldn't have nearly enough parking for it. So we are,
You're getting rid of Leo's?
I didn't say that.
They're kind of a restaurant.
So that would answer that question. Regarding turning around on the site, when we did meet with the town previously, the fire chief had expressed, they do have a big ladder truck. They will not entertain the thought of driving straight in and backing out on the Route 1. Neither would we. So we are proposing a hammerhead style turnaround in the back here. It will likely modify slightly. We just got the template from the fire department to get their truck in and out. But essentially, the truck will be able to come in, pull into the back of the building here, back up, and make a nice big three-point turn comfortably for their big vehicle. If the fire truck can do it, any delivery vehicle, any small moving truck will be able to make that maneuver, et cetera.
Is
So-
that how you're planning on doing all the Amazon stuff to the tenants? They're gonna pull in that way?
Maybe?
Hey, gotta ask, these are the times. You got 18 units, that's a lot of Amazon stuff.
That, behind the building there, that was just landscaping?
Correct. Grass, maybe some sort of a common area, maybe some.
I mean, maybe you can use that for something other than grass, but not pavement.
Correct.
To
Some sort of
facilitate,
open
yeah.
recreational space for the
No,
town.
facilitate emergency
Correct.
vehicles.
Some of it will have to be for specifically turning around larger vehicles on the site.
Yeah.
Not the majority.
Did you have the dumpster right in the way of? any
Yes,
of the-
again, that's gonna shift. It's gonna get reworked a little bit in the rear of that site there to accommodate all of the
Okay.
questions and comments from other people in town.
All right.
Yeah,
as we go forward, we're gonna iron out a lot of stuff from site plan review and.
Gotta start somewhere.
I know, we're in the beginning, but I think we have something good to start with.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we don't have variances after seeing the first meeting here today.
That's right,
So, it makes things a lot easier going forward. And I wanna address some of the concerns too about the businesses. We don't have any suggested business for the first floor. The business zone is very generous in Walpole. It offers a lot of different uses for offices and many different things. So, as tenants approach later on, they would probably have to go through some kind of process or go to the building commissioner and figure out their parking code. Right now, with the way the zoning law is written, with a mixed-use building, they require us to use code 4 and code 1, and use the minimum of code 4. Otherwise, if we had more parking, believe it or not, we'd actually have to ask for a special permit according to the way the zoning bylaw is written. So that's why we are where we are. At the 21 parking spaces, we went with the minimum on that, on code 4 as the bylaw requests. So we're gonna have to entertain businesses that would work with the parking situation.
So a question about the town engineer's comment about the access to the garage?
Yes.
Is there a building code recommendation or requirement on grade down?
As far as the bylaw is concerned, there is no description of
No, that would be a building code thing,
Yeah,
right?
but building code, I don't know.
No, there's no building code. I mean, things you want to do is like, we'll get to around 8% max, 8 to 10% max. But the reason why the garage door is in the front is that ramp will be protected from, the elements,
Right.
basically.
Right.
Yeah, so it would be a
then
heated
we can
ramp,
have-
yeah.
We can have a deeper slope inside, but keep the slope in the front of the building minimum.
So the slope is pretty much indoors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get
Yeah.
at.
That's why that was a
to-
building
Yeah, to
code.
alleviate the concerns of, icing or
Mhm.
car slipping down. It would be heated, the driveway would be heated. As you exit the garage door, there's about, I believe, a 28-foot stretch of relatively level ground.
Mhm.
So you get, you can have two cars pretty much queue in to get out onto the street. And again, that's just for the underground parking for the tenants. You don't have that much traffic there. Other concerns that we're still working on with the town engineer, the driveway going into the, above-grade parking.
Yeah.
Kevin just mentioned, it was at 10% on the plans you guys are looking at. We reduced that so far right now down to 6%. We're still working it. But we gotta keep in mind, there's a parking garage underneath there. So there's only so much we can go down, and at the same time, we have to have some form of a pitch to drain water.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, yep.
So we can't make it flat, but we are looking into those concerns.
Okay.
And we're gonna meet with DOT, make sure everything's okay with them, and get all the proper permitting for the curb cuts and the drainage, and, we're gonna need all that going forward with site plan review and the Conservation Commission and so forth.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Jane, do you have any comments? Any comments? Because, yeah. Does anybody else from the public that wants to comment on this or have any questions? Okay, okay. Drew, anything?
Not at this time.
Okay. I think we should probably do is continue this until another meeting. You have some work to get done. You're gonna do some revisions. You've heard some of the concerns that the board has. I go back to the density. I guess, look, anything you can redo as far as reduction of density probably works in your favor with this board. And also, particularly, the traffic flow. I come back to the fact that this is only about a 3/4 of an acre lot. You're trying to put a lot onto it, and some of it's gonna work, and we'll see about some of the other stuff, how that works. Okay.
Sounds good.
Have you done test pits there
Yes, we have.
for water table? Are you above?
Some fill on top, followed by fairly deep groundwater, and very sandy gravelly soil, so, to meet the infiltration requirements for the regulations shouldn't be a problem on this.
What about the water table with respect to the garage?
With respect to the garage is designed to be above the water table, so there wouldn't be no need for a sump pump or perimeter foundation drains or anything like that.
Okay, yep,
We were fortunate to find fairly deep groundwater on the site.
okay.
Okay. Amy, what's the next available? Oh, first off, what are you looking at for a timescale? Come back in a month, or, you've still got other hearings to open up and start with?
Yeah, I was hoping to work on the special permit and then dive into site plan review, because otherwise site plan review wouldn't make sense without the special permit, given the nature of the site.
You got Concom.
What's that?
You got Concom.
Conservation.
Conservation.
Yeah, conservation, yeah. We have conservation, we have a couple other departments we have to talk to, however, the size of the building is gonna make a difference here. So, a special permit does come into play, just to know how we're gonna address things.
Right.
And it's gonna be a big difference if, it's not the same building we're proposing.
Yeah.
But,
So our next meeting,
is it February 19th is the next one?
February 19th,
And
but
then March 18th.
March 18th. March 4th is nothing.
Summer
Okay.
Street.
Oh, that's the 40B, Summer Street, okay. So,
Is March 4th, you said, available?
no, it's not. No, that's dedicated to a application for a 40B in South
Okay.
Walpole. So,
You'll be very busy. You said March 18th is available?
March 18th is the next one.
If that's available, we'll take that, gives us a little bit of time to at least meet with some other departments and figure out how we can address some concerns.
I think that'd be good if you come in,
No, I
you know,
come, I come home.
we all agree you're improving something.
I
Oh,
come
what's
home
it?
the 19th,
Okay, so,
but I can mull it.
okay, Suzanne will do the mowing. Oh, we also have Drew with us, so. Okay, so, the applicant wants, at the request of the applicant, to continue to the 18th. So, let's see.
I move to continue the hearing until March 18th, 7 o'clock in this room.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Suzanne. No further notice will be given. Okay, all those in favor of request, the applicant's request to continue to March 18th, 2020 at 7 PM, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried.
Reports.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Good luck, guys. Now,
Amy, I asked you for if there were any meetings that week,
We
'cause I
have-
was gonna be gone.
we have a couple minutes from December 4th and January 15th. I did review them, and I have one question on one of the things. Amy, there's some asterisks on these. Let me see which one it is.
Minutes?
On the minutes of, must be December 4th.
It's on you.
This is
On you.
on page 2 of the minutes. Asterisk, town engineer stated town is willing to take Burns Ave, and then it ends with an asterisk. Do you see that?
Page 2?
On page 2, yeah. I'm sorry, page 3. Page 3. I just didn't know what. Number 11,
Oh.
point 11.
Yeah, well, Carl said it, I guess I can get rid of the asterisks.
Okay, so that was that a quote? Or? I don't know what it.
Let her review.
We can take the asterisks out and just
Okay.
keep that in there, because it was sad.
Okay,
I probably just put that in my notes when I was.
everything else looked good, I just didn't know what the asterisks were, so. Does anybody, in the first one, or the January 15th, those were all cases that were being continued, so, that was pretty straightforward.
Can we vote on
The minutes?
Bob, are you ready to vote, or do you
Yeah,
want?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, could I have a, motion to accept the minutes of January 15th, 2020?
Only people who were here, right?
Nope. What's that?
Only-
Yeah, you have to have been here to vote on that.
But I think you can vote on minutes even if you weren't
No.
there, right?
No.
No?
So voting on this one was where everything was continued. It will be me, Suzanne, and Bob.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So,
I think I
okay,
went through.
so those were just continuance. The other one is, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of December 4th, 2019, and with the one removal of the asterisks on page 3, point number 11.
Second.
Oh, wait, I didn't make the motion. Suzanne made the motion. Could I have a second on that?
Second,
Second by Jane.
Bob's a twin seed.
Okay, any further discussion on those minutes?
The next one's
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried.
I wasn't here anymore.
Okay,
You were getting sunburned.
okay.
No.
The next, our next meeting is scheduled for February 19th. So in 2 weeks, we will be coming back here. Does anybody have anything else for the zoning board?
No.
Okay. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Moved by Jane, second by Suzanne. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. This meeting is adjourned.